Welcome back to Take Action News, everybody. David Shuster here. We were talking earlier in the show about the sequester, and I described it as somewhat crazy just because the idea of the sequesters is to somehow close the budget deficit by $85 billion. And yet, just because of the growth of our economy in the first 3 months of this year, we have already closed the deficit by $86 billion. And this sort of meat cleaver approach to cutting government spending is simply ridiculous by most accounts. So there's an effort in Congress now to try and end the sequester. And there has been a piece of legislation introduced, co-sponsored by Congressman Alan Grayson, Democrat from Florida. It's been co-sponsored by John Conyers, Democrat from Michigan. It is simply one sentence long, and it would simply end the sequester with just a simple vote in Congress. Seems reasonable to me. We're going to talk to Alan Grayson about that in just a second. But also to set this up, Alan Grayson has been extremely outspoken in terms of what he describes as the Republican efforts in all of these budget debates, efforts involving the economy and issues of our time involving fiscal policy and monetary policy. You recall that the Republicans were essentially making a big issue out of the debt ceiling, that Congress should not allow authorization of the debt ceiling to be raised. Here's Congressman Alan Grayson describing the Republicans as practicing legislative terrorism. Listen to this.
Well, they changed because they see it's a device for them to extract concessions they would never otherwise be able to accomplish. That's why it's legislative terrorism. They're using the debt ceiling as a means to cut Social Security benefits, cut Medicare benefits, cut unemployment insurance, cut anything of any use to any ordinary human being in this country, simply because they want more money for tax cuts for the rich.
Now, you may think it's strong language, but that's one of the reasons that a lot of people find Alan Grayson, congressman who represents Orlando, Florida, Florida's 9th district, to be so refreshing because he's blunt and he speaks his mind. Alan Grayson burst onto the national scene when, during the health care debate, he said the Republican solution is simply for seniors to die early, die young, that's what Republicans were advocating as far as their plan. He's a controversial figure. He lost an election, of course, back in 2010, but he regained his seat in 2012. We're going to be talking with him shortly. And one of the things to remember about Alan Grayson is he's not exactly beloved by some of his own Democratic colleagues, particularly those in the leadership. And one of the reasons he's not beloved is because Alan Grayson has essentially gone the progressive route on issues like Social Security and Medicare. And at a time when some top Democratic leaders, including Nancy Pelosi and others of the Democratic leadership in the House and also in the Senate, are suggesting that they would support or they would find a way to somehow, they're simply not going to criticize President Obama for some of his changes to Social Security, like the chain CPI, which would essentially throw thousands of people into poverty. There are a number of progressive Democrats, led by Alan Grayson, who are saying, absolutely not. And are not going to allow any changes to Social Security or Medicare or cost of living adjustment. So Alan Grayson, to the frustration of some Democratic leaders, he has circulated a letter to that extent, pledging that he will not vote. He will vote against any cuts to Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid benefits, and he's urging his colleagues to stand with him. He sent this letter to President Obama, and he's now got more than 20 Democratic colleagues in the House to join in. And that's it's a significant movement on the left among progressives. So we're going to talk with Congressman Grayson in just a second here.